Hello everyone, my name is Jamie Walker. Today I'm going to be covering what I learned in educating exceptional students here at Fort Hays State University. Let's jump right in. Alright, in this PowerPoint we're going to go over what disabilities I learned about this semester, the characteristics of the disabilities, and what universal design and instructional strategies are, and how I would include my students in the classroom by giving examples. To start out with, I'm going to be talking about 10 disabilities that I learned about this semester. Learning disabilities, communication, emotional, ADHD, intellectual, autism, physical or other health impairments, brain injuries, hearing, and visual impairments, including blindness. First of all, let's cover what Universal Design of Learning is, or UDL. Universal Design of Learning is an approach to curriculum that minimizes barriers and maximizes learning for all students. So what does that mean? So basically means that as a teacher, I hope to provide every opportunity for all students to be able to learn in a general classroom, whether that is giving them different strategies, keywords, technology, and really anything that I can provide for all students to benefit from my teaching. First one we're going to cover today is learning disorders. Learning disorder is one or more of the basic psychological processes involved in understanding or using language, spoken or written. So what that is are students who struggle with processing the information that they're hearing or reading. And not all learning disabilities are the same. There are several categories. There's usually low academic achievement, challenges and on how they process information, and it's usually not math or reading. There's about 20% of students who have learning disabilities that do have both. Reading examples would be dyslexia, reading comprehension, oral expression, mathematic problems. Maybe another one some students struggle with, and that could be procedural or factual retrieval. But there's many categories. Some things that we can do to help our students and be involved in the classroom and learn the best that they can would be focus on the strengths that they're best with. So to me, that would be if I know some students do better with visual aids, I'm going to provide visual aids for them in order to process what they're talking about. Presentation tools or clues, providing graphic organizers for those students who do better with organization that way. The next disorder I'm going to talk about is communication. The communication disorder is receiving, understanding, and expressing information, whether that's feeling or ideas. That doesn't have to be just speech. That could be in their body language, the pitch of voice they use, their social interaction, even their posture, slouched over. And that also can be broken down into several categories. Ways to help students who have communication disorders would to provide them with assistive technology, audio and text, social interaction, and that in my case I would probably make sure that if some students do better in smaller groups versus a very large group, or calling on them in front of a large group, I may not do so. Controlled vocabulary and providing multiple ways to present their information could be another one, whether it's written, visual supports, or PowerPoints. Emotional behavioral disorders. An emotional behavioral disorder usually are in characteristics of one or more of these over a long period of time. It could be acting out, unhappiness, depression, anxiety. Things like this that affect their educational experience. Other ways that we can provide assistance to students who have emotional behavioral disorders could be providing them with technology. I learned in our textbook that It is proven that technology can reduce stress and anxiety for students, and having that one-on self-reliant educating helps them. Also, having positive behavioral reinforcement. So when students are doing well and interacting well and not acting out, the more we praise them for doing those things, the better that they're going to do. Next is ADHD. ADHD is limited strength, vitality, or alertness, and that includes about 2/3 of all students. They have heightened alertness, lowered alertness, and environmental stimuli resulted in a limited alertness with stimuli. So what that is they have difficulty paying attention. They have struggles with listening, organization, sustaining mental effort to pay attention in the classroom. Some ways we can help our students is by minimizing clutter around them, so making sure they don't have any personal items in their desk. I would probably let my students stand in the classroom during lectures in the back to make sure that they have something to focus on, and giving them goals to set for too. A lot of ADHD students or students with ADHD do better when they have a goal set for them. It's something that they can focus on. Intellectual disorders. Intellectual disorders, or students with intellectual disorders, significantly are sub-average in general mental development, and this mental development usually happens in the developmental period. So a lot of students with intellectual disorders work well with electronic books, something where they don't have to interact in large groups, and they have trouble focusing as well. So maybe giving them extended time on some tests. Or in a classroom, I could ask, instead of just a given answer when asking a question, I could give them options, A, B, or C. Which one do you think is best? So giving them multiple choice, it leads them towards the right direction and ways to focus on what they're learning. Autism. Autism disability is that significantly impacts communication and social interactions, is usually present before the age of 3. Negative impacts with students on education performance. And with autism, we used to call it pervasive disorder. Now we call it the autistic spectrum disorder. So you can see in the top right-hand corner of my screen, I have many of the branches that autistic spectrum disorders break down into. There's not just a set in stone, when you have this, you have autism. There are several degrees of autism that students may have, and that is something to look out for. Some things we can help our students with autism with would be learning to learn. So in our book, it gave an example of a student who did better sitting under her desk and focusing. In the past, we may have discouraged that, but now it doesn't affect other students' learning. So if that helps her, focus on the lecture that we're giving, that may be something we would do in a classroom. Helping with social decision making, giving key strategies, discrete trial teaching, and acknowledging appropriate behavior. Again, letting them know that they're doing well in things could also help them in the classroom. Physical or other health impairments. Physical impairments, you may think of children or students in wheelchairs, students who may be using crutches, but physical or other health impairments may not be something that you always see. It could be a student with asthma. Some characteristics of that is exactly what I explained. They're not always cut and dry. Universal design instructional strategies to help students perform in the classroom would be digital forums or other media. Some students may not be able to relay those informations without other technology. Giving adaptions to the classroom, such as making sure the aisles are wide enough for students to get in and out of. And physical access to things. I know in a lot of old schools, like my middle school, we didn't have ramp access to other testing for our ACT. That's something we need to keep in mind for our students to enable to benefit them for their learning. We want to make sure that all students are able to learn in a general education classroom as much as possible. And brain injuries. Brain injuries is something that usually happen in like things like a car accident. And it may be things that we don't even think about. Injuries are external physical force resulting in total or partial functional disability or physiological impairment. Like I said, that could be a student who has been in a car accident or is recovering from a stroke, possibly even seizures. Some characteristics of brain injuries could result in atrophy, which is weakness of muscle, emotional, behavioral, and social changes. So they may not be acting socially as they were before. Some things we could do for students would be instructional pacing, making sure that I'm giving my instruction in a slower pace. While doing that, I may be giving frequent feedback and also asking for their feedback. What have you learned from what I just said? This will keep them on track. Also, making rubric changes. Maybe if you had a rubric that was about handwriting in the classroom, but now you have a student with brain injuries, you may want to change that rubric in order to accommodate that. And we're down to our last two. The last two are hearing and visual impairments or disorders. With hearing disorders, that covers deaf as well. Deaf actually isn't until you are 70 to 90 decibels of hearing loss. Otherwise, it's called hard of hearing. That is 20 to 70 decibels. And cognitive hearing would be when your hearing was lost at birth. Many students may struggle with communication and may only communicate with ASL. They may have trouble speaking, reading, writing, and you may want to look out for that in the classroom. You may not know if you have a student has hearing impairment. Some things we could do for them is provide a sound field amplification system. That's a teacher can have that posted in their classroom, which will amplify their sound to the decimals where they can hear. Also, loop systems is another one that was spoken about in our book. That was for students. When you speak, they have a management setting on their side with a handheld that can repeat what they said, higher it, lower it, whatever is needed. Also making sure with computers and maybe having closed captions for things that you're speaking about in the classroom, and even providing an interpreter if needed. The last one I want to talk about today is visual disorders, including blindness. What is a visual disorder? A visual disorder could be measured in the acuity chart. What an acuity chart is, when you go to see the eye doctor, it's the E chart. Starts with an E and has all the other letters. When you can't see that E, you're at 2200, which is legally blind. Other impairments on vision is tunnel vision. Definition of impairment in vision is that even when corrected, it affects your educational performance. So things that we can do with students who have visual impairment or blindness disorder would be making sure that we have speak text for things they may need, providing an Acubus or a stylus, or even providing Braille, making sure social interactions is something that they're involved with, and also having large prints for our classroom. All of these disorders is something that really impacted me on my learning this semester. I am not someone who has had a lot of interaction with students with certain disabilities, so I was really glad to cover this, and I can't wait to learn more. You guys have a great day. Thank you.